Now that we have our historical data in place, let's do a very basic forecast so we can see how to set this up properly with formatting and formulas. So I'm going to start a new subheading here for assumptions. And I'm going to bold it. And I'm going to want to understand what revenue growth is going to be. So I'm going to put revenue growth. I want to understand what cost of goods sold is as a percent of revenue. I'll want to put in SG&A as a dollar forecast. I'll want to put in depreciation as a percent of sales in this case, or percent of revenue, as a very, very simplistic way of forecasting depreciation. In our financial modeling courses, we will go into much more detail of how to forecast depreciation properly. Interest in this case will just be in dollars. I'll want to know the tax rate. So with these assumptions here, I'll be able to forecast the income statement going forward. The first thing I'm going to do here now is calculate the historical revenue growth rate. So I'm going to set it equal to the 2015 revenue divided by the 2014 revenue minus 1. And I'm going to press Alt-H-P to quickly make that a percent. And if I want to add a decimal point to it, I can press Alt-H0. Alt-H0 adds decimal places. Alt-H9 removes decimal places. I'm going to leave it at 1 decimal place. I can only calculate it for 2015, as in 2014 I obviously don't have a prior period to compare it to. For cost of goods sold, I'm going to take that divided by revenue and press Alt-H-P again and Alt-H0 to calculate cost of goods sold as a percent of revenue. Holding Shift and pressing right arrow, I can fill it right with Control R. Next I'm going to reference SG&A, and I'm just going to reference it as a dollar value. So I'm just going to set it equal to that cell and then press Control R to fill it right. Depreciation I want to calculate as a percentage of revenue. So I take depreciation and divide it by revenue. I then press Alt-H-P to make it a percentage and Alt-H0 to add a decimal place. Interest will be a direct reference to the dollar values. And tax rate will be taxes divided by earnings before tax. I press Alt-H-P and Alt-H0 to make it a percentage. I then select these cells using using the Shift and down arrow and the right arrow and pressing Control R. So I now have in place all of the historical assumptions that will influence what I want to use as the forecast assumptions. I'm going to make this very straightforward and just make the forecast more or less equal to the historical numbers. So we can start with revenue growth and make it 10%. Cost of goods sold, I'm going to keep constant at 45%. SG&A, I will step up a little bit to a rounder number of 20 million. Depreciation, I will round up to 5%. Interest, I'll keep constant at 1 million. And taxes, I'll keep constant at 30%. So what I'm going to do now is format this number using Alt-H-P for percentage and Alt-H0 to add a decimal place. And then press Alt-F-C, Alt-H-F-C to grab the blue font color, which I can copy and paste special using Alt-H-V, S for special, T for formats. I can go down to this number here and press F4 to repeat, and tax rate F4 to repeat again. On these next two cells, I'm also going to copy and then paste special, Alt-H, V-S, T, and I'm going to repeat that using F4 down here. and I actually am going to also make it a blue font color. So that's Alt H FC. Alt H FC. So I've now got my forecast assumptions in place. And since I'm just going to straight line this forecast, we can select these, holding Shift and the down arrow, still holding Shift, press the right arrow to get to 2020, and press Control R. So I now have a straight line forecast here with no changes to the assumptions. We're just focusing on the formatting and structure here. Now that we have our forecast assumptions in place, let's move up to the top of the income statement and start filling out the forecast. We're going to set the first year of forecast equal to the historical year times 1 plus, and if I press Control and the down arrow, I quickly jump to revenue growth, where I can close bracket. The formatting here is not correct, so what I'm going to do is copy this cell here, which is the formatting I want to borrow and apply to the entire forecast area. So I select the area and I press Alt H V S T, enter. The entire forecast area is all formulas, so it's all going to be black. Next, I'm going to forecast cost of goods sold as being revenue times, and I press Control down and then down arrow one more time, percent of revenue. Gross profit I can copy over using Control R. SG&A can be a straight link down, pressing Control and the down arrow to then select SG&A. EBITDA can be copied over with Control R. Depreciation will be a percent of revenue, so revenue multiplied by the appropriate percentage. And you'll notice here that I'm using Control and the up and down arrows to quickly move around this sheet. So interest equal to Control down arrow again brings me to the bottom of the assumptions, and then up arrow once. Earnings before tax, I select and fill right with Control R. Taxes is equal to earnings before tax multiplied by, and then I'm going to press Control down once, Control down twice to jump all the way to the bottom. And net income I can copy across with Control R. So I've now got the entire income statement forecast here for 2016. In order to fill in the rest of the table, press Control and Shift as well as the down arrow to select the entire year. Let go of Control and just holding Shift and the right arrow, select the area to the right. Now press Control R to fill it right. As you can see, this allows us to build a forecast very quickly in a very organized and logical way. So we've now got all of our drivers in place down here, all of the formulas copied across here. We can use F2 to quickly audit a few of these cells and make sure they're linked up correctly. So I'm just sort of picking some random spots here and making sure that yes, these formulas are what they're supposed to be. This is really just for sanity and confidence building more than anything else. The next thing I'm going to do is a little bit of formatting. So I think it's nice to bold the revenue line at the top and bold the net income line at the bottom. So I'm using Control, Shift, and right arrow to select these areas, and then I'm using Control B to bold. The next thing I'm going to do is add in a few borders. I think putting a border above a subtotal is a nice way to group Excel work. So let's select a gross profit here and then press Alt H, B for border, P for top. So as you can see, I've got a line here at the gross profit subtotal. Let's do the same with EBITDA, Alt H, BP. Earnings before tax, Alt H, BP. And with net income, let's do a slightly different one. Let's do Alt H, B, and U, which does a top and bottom line. The next thing we're going to do here is remove the grid lines so we can really see the nice formatting. In order to do that, let's use the shortcuts Alt, W, VG. And as you can see, we've now got a clean sheet here with no grid lines.